I need some traction. You need some traction.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. First of all, I'm super excited to be here. I know it's hard. We had a lot of speakers, a lot of great speakers today. So my name is Josephine Foucher, and I'm a product manager at Hotwire, and my life is optimization. So I do A/B testing all day long, all the time, and I'm going to try and help you with finding and prioritizing your test ideas. So the way I structured this talk is around 3 key elements. The first one is, how do you build the culture? Because finding and prioritizing ideas is great, but for you to be able to be successful with your testing program, you need to actually have the structure in place that will actually support and empower this program. And then once you have those, how do you actually find the best ideas out there, and how do you choose where to start? So without further ado, building the culture. So I'm sure that you guys have very different profiles. Some companies are very data-driven, and it's about show me the results, show me the lift. In that case, you can skip this part and answer your emails. But a lot of companies actually have to deal with the challenge of why do we need to test? I don't trust the data. This is right. We need to do it. It's part of our strategy anyways. So let's just go ahead and roll it because I want to be fast, and testing takes some time because you need to actually get the results. So how do you address that challenge? I like this quote from Einstein, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The whole point of testing is to actually know the impact of what you're doing, learning from that so you can do the best possible experience for your customers. And so I think that we owe it to our customers to really try and give them the best that is out there. And if you have a site that has a lot of traffic and you don't spend the time to actually question the different experiences, the elements in your site, and try to make them the best you can, well, you're leaving money on the table, and you're also not being fair to your customers because you owe them that kind of research and dedication. So if you don't have an optimization and data-driven culture, where do you start? It's always hard, especially if there's reluctance from throughout the team. You can't just get everybody on board right away. So I would say start by finding your champions. Find the one designer who used to do testing and realize that it's super valuable. Find the one engineer who finds it fun to be able to submit his ideas, and then build from that. And at the end of the day, if you want to be successful, you'll need to make sure that it's not just marketing that's on board, but also product, design, engineering. Everybody needs to be there and to believe in it, because if you have problems there, you need to address them before you just start testing, because the worst that can happen is to have an optimization pod that doesn't communicate with the rest of the company, doesn't spread the learning, and doesn't really enable everybody else to know what customers want. So if you don't have that, you need to address it first. It takes a village to get there. After that, so I do a lot of tests, and it's hard to communicate what we do, what we learn, because we have hundreds of tests, hundreds of results, and it's just overwhelming. So how do you make sure that what you do, the learnings get recorded and stick? One of the tricks that I use is make people vote and prove them wrong. You'll probably notice there's a tendency when you show people results to kind of back rationalize what happened, saying, yeah, obviously this call to action is better, obviously this copy is more compelling. And if you show everybody just the final results of what you've done, then there's a tendency of thinking that was obvious, I could have told you, without testing. So by making them vote before they have the results, you can actually prove people wrong, and now they have skin in the game, the learning will stuck. And that's what you're trying to do, is for the key things that you learn, how do you get those to be basically available for everybody and not just you? I learned a lot by my customer, but I'm not doing a great job unless everybody else learns. And the other piece is you need to actually build knowledge. And for this, I like to think of little building blocks of knowledge and insights about your customers, and you should have like a reference point of like what are the biggest things you've discovered, like the biggest surprises, the greatest winner, greatest losers, and have those available for everybody in the company to reference so that you can start really being not just one little pod doing its thing on the side, but really the gateway to let everybody understand your customers. So yeah, the worst that can happen is you learn a lot, but it stops at you, because then you're not empowering the company to get better. So, I'm gonna say what I do what I preach. So this is a big redesign project that we did for Hotwire, where we tried, the first one is the control. We tried 2 variants. So I'm going to make you vote. Put your hand, like 0 if you think control 1 or 2. Which one do you think was the best experience out there? Just take a guess. It's OK, I won't remember and hold it against you. Anybody? So 0, 1, 2. Which one do you think was the best? OK. So it was 2. I thought it would be 1. And everybody else in our company thought it would be 1. We're trying to be a lot more inspirational, and the copy is, not just savings focused, but travel focused. It's exciting, and yet it didn't work, But we still celebrated that. And the reason is you need to give people permission to explore if you're going to find the next big thing. And actually, the huge winner was variant 2. And one of the things that I think is really important to recognize when you start testing is if you're going to find the next big thing, you need to be allowed to also fail spectacularly, because you're basically uncovering the thing that matter. And yeah, sometimes you're uncovering them the wrong way, but it's very important to give permission to fail. Otherwise, you're just going to be changing the color of a button and the copy, and you're not going to find the next big thing. So that's it for the culture. You need to make sure you have promoters, you address any concerns with the other teams, you socialize the results, you have a structure of building blocks, and you actually embrace learnings in whatever form. Now that you have that, we can start talking about finding specific test ideas. So the first thing is, at the end of the day, there's a lot of blogs out there, like top 10 test IDs, what to do, change your, I think, even Des was talking earlier, change your call to action, etc. There's kind of a tips and tricks of 10 IDs that you need to test. Well, that's really not what your optimization program should be about. It starts with your strategy to define where you want to go, and then you use testing to get there without hurting, And so I think that's the right way to think about your program. And when you think about testing, you shouldn't be throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. You should really try to see where you want to be and then take steps to get there. So now there's a lot of frameworks for strategy, so I'm not going to explain to you how you come up with that. Once you know where you want to go, you also need to know who you are. So how do you do that? So the first thing, and maybe that's because I was an analyst before, is I think you need to know your performance. You need to know your numbers. You need to have your data straight. You need to know, which pages bounce more, what traffic is converting best. You need to understand really the performance of your site. And then the second piece is you need to actually listen to your customers. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people already touched on that. I look at my sites every day, all day. There are things in there that are so obvious to me that new users just don't get, And it's hard. You can't unlearn what you know. So it's hard for you to realize what your site feels for a new user unless you force yourself to actually get out there and try to understand them. We even show customer videos of a first-time user to everybody in the company to really understand what it feels like to discover us, because otherwise you'll just forget, and that's when you miss out on the most obvious things. And then the last thing is benchmarking. You're not just an isolated element. For travel, obviously, people compare lots of sites. There are expectations around what is the flow, what is the process. You need to know who are the best in your field to know, maybe you're not going to do exactly the same. I'm not saying you should just do Me Too features, but you should be aware. And if you're not going to do those things, that should be intentional. Because if you just don't really know what's going on, there's no way you can stay on top of your game. And then customer trends. For us, it's whatever, virtual reality and chatting box, you need to know all of that. So you're not solving a generic problem, and you need to know yourself. And finally, engage everybody. I think we have lots of different profiles. People see different things. As a product manager, I focus on certain stuff. Other team members will have other things. And if you don't actually empower them to participate and submit ideas, you're only going to be testing the same kind of things. And so you're not going to find the next big thing. So at the end of the day, you start with your strategy to know where you want to go. You do your homework to know where you're good and where you need to get better. And then you actually make sure that everybody's involved so you have a comprehensive set of ideas. So now you have like hundreds of ideas, at least I do, a huge backlog. A lot of them very interesting, but it's just overwhelming. You can't test everything, and you shouldn't test everything. So how do you decide where to start? That's always paralyzing. And no, I don't have like a magic trick that will tell you these are the losers. If I could tell you for sure what's going to win, we wouldn't need to test. The whole point is we do have to test, but we can be informed. That doesn't mean we should just go blindly and use testing instead of reflection and strategy. So the first thing that I think everybody needs to do when they think about a testing program is a test is an opportunity to learn about your customers. And so you should really frame your test ideas as hypotheses, where you're then going to design the test about learning these insights. So if then because is something we try to use all the time, and forcing these structures really makes sure that you have a clear purpose for your test, a clear learning objective, and that the next steps kind of come naturally once you've nailed that. So then once you have all your tests framed as hypotheses, then you can start prioritizing. I have like a whole separate 30-minute talk about prioritization, so I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but I think the version 0 is to talk about value and effort. So effort is how much it's going to cost you to develop that. And value is about, how do you have reasons to believe that this is going to be successful? And you can use stuff like the reach, share of the customers that will be impacted by your change. You should leverage all the work that you've done before. Does it help you get to where you want to be in terms of strategy? Does it address customer pain points? Is it supported by data? All of that. And based on this research, you can start plotting your ideas, and then you can choose where you want to go. So high value, low effort is definitely where you want to be. High value, high effort, I think we heard it earlier, is like that's where your strategy is. So testing can help you validate hypotheses. For example, for us, it's like, oh, a destination finder, would people want that? Maybe I don't need to build a whole feature, but I can build a link of like, help me find a destination, and I can get a sense of how many of my customers would be interested about that. So you can do like smoke test or minimum viable products there, just to make sure that this is really something that the value is there. And low effort, low value, this is kind of the danger. I think Des calls this snacking. Basically, if you spend too much time going for those easy, nobody's going to yell at you because you're doing it, but still you're missing out on what could make a difference. So just be very careful. If you're not really intentionally prioritizing on value, realize that you might be just wasting your team's time. And finally, build knowledge. So your test shouldn't be isolated. It shouldn't be just one test, and then I'm going to try something completely different and then see what happens there. Because otherwise, you're not really building value, and you're not building knowledge. So it's really about having a flow. So you choose a pain point, I don't know, for us, whatever, map experience, right? And then you build, OK, let's try to explore different areas there, and then learn, what are the winners, what are the losers, and then go from there. So for example, for us, a winner, an interesting one was guest favorite on the results page as a badge. Our hypothesis is like, it's overwhelming. There's so much going on. All the results look the same. Using badging does visual distinction that allows users to choose more carefully. It was a winner. Then there are natural next steps that can come. We say, OK, this badging resonates with our customers. Maybe we should put it on details, and maybe even on building to nurture this trust and feeling that people love this place. Maybe it also means that customer reviews really matter. So maybe we should actually make it more weight in terms of our sort algorithm. All of those things are natural next steps once you really think about it in terms of the process and not just an individual test. And for loser and conclusive, so if it's somewhere you want to be, don't let a loser kill your strategy. It's a very dangerous thing. If you know that this is where you want to go, one loser is just a learning, and you should try to keep and iterate, because at the end of the day, testing is just a tool. It's an enabler, but it doesn't have all the keys. But you have to be intentional. If you think that if this is not aligned with your strategy and there's nothing obviously wrong with the execution, then don't get stuck in your ways there and just move on. And yeah, make sure you use your results to inform next steps. So on that note, what you should take home, basically culture, make sure you find your promoters, you address concerns within different teams, you socialize the results so it doesn't stop at your pod, and then you celebrate insight to give permission to fail. You find ideas by knowing your strategy, knowing where you stand, and getting everybody involved to participate. And finally, you build a process that is hypothesis-driven, where you have prioritization process and where you build knowledge. If you have more questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
I need some traction. You need some traction.